Hello and welcome to the Outdoorsy Educator podcast, where stories become lessons and every journey has something to teach us. Every week I sit down with people from all walks of life to hear their adventures, explore their experiences, and uncover the insights that have shaped them along the way. Whether it's from the outdoors, the classroom, or any other path, each conversation offers a fresh perspective on learning, growth, and what it means to truly connect with the world and the people around us. And on this week's episode of the Outdoorsy Educator podcast, we have Narrowboat Beck. Beck, how are you today?
Hi, I'm really good, thank you. How are you?
Doing wonderful, thank you. I've been following your Instagram journey with passion. I'm so excited to talk to you. You're doing
Oh,
amazing things. Why don't you tell our audience a little bit about who you are and what you do?
thank you. My name's Beck. I live on a 58-foot narrowboat called Athena. It's a relatively new journey for me. I only moved in back in October, which is about, well, time is flying. It's about 8 months ago
I was
now.
going to say you're
So,
coming up on a year already.
yeah, I still feel like a total newbie with some things, but then other things, it's just second nature. So it's been a steep learning curve because it's completely different to anything I've done before. But yeah, I'm loving every minute, and I like to document my travels and adventures on the Canal network.
I love it, and I've got so many questions about life on a narrow boat. But I thought it might be best to start off before Athena came into your life. What did life look like for you, and then what led you to start this journey on the narrow boat?
So this is always, I find this one a really interesting question if ever I get asked it. So from an early age, I was sort of going through the motions of what I thought normal life should be. I studied really hard at school, and then I went to college. And then straight out of college, I went into full-time work.
Hmm.
And during that, I had a partner from the age of 15, and we were together for 8 years. We got a mortgage together, and eventually things didn't work out. So we had to sadly sell the house that we'd spent years renovating together. And I had to move back in with mum and dad at the age of 23 after having 4 years kind of freedom to, you know, try out this whole adult thing.
Right.
And it was a bit of a shock to the system, but yeah, it was. I was really fortunate to be in the situation where I had such a supportive family to go back to give me a home.
Wonderful.
And yeah, so all of that time I was kind of focused on, getting a mortgage, getting engaged, getting married, and then all of a sudden my life kind of tipped on its head, and I was left not really knowing what to do. I felt like I hadn't really got my own personality. I didn't feel like I was my own person. I was just following all these steps that I thought were expected of people. And it kind of left me with a really blank slate. And I thought, you know what, I can't spend my life kind
Hmm.
of living as people expect. What do I want to do? And it kind of, I almost started to delve into this chapter of me where I could discover new hobbies and the things that I liked and really consider what I wanted to do in life. And turns out I was kind of just ready for adventure. I wanted to
Right.
live and explore. And I've got a beautiful rescue dog as well called Ethel. So I looked at getting houses, and funnily enough, the banks don't want to lend to a young single woman, or I'd put in an offer and someone else would beat me to it.
Hmm.
And it was really just this um, kind of cutthroat culture of trying to get onto the property ladder again. And I just thought, I can't keep doing this. I'm desperate for my own independence again. And I wanted to travel, but I had the kind of responsibility of being a dog owner, and any time that I'm away from her, I miss her so much it hurts.
Yep.
So I thought, you know what, I'm just gonna get a narrowboat and we can travel together. We can slow down the pace a little bit, and it'll just give us room to blossom.
I love it. We have three rescue dogs ourselves, so I can completely relate to that.
Oh,
I mean, they drive us crazy at
yeah,
times, but also, like I mentioned to you before we started recording, we were just in Scotland for a month, and we miss them. You know, you miss them terribly.
yeah,
Absolutely. And I'm also just thinking at the ripe old age of 44, I've got the slight benefit of hindsight of thinking, well, obviously, splitting from your partner and moving back in with your parents, none of that seems ideal and wonderful. But how fortunate, in a sense, for that to happen at 23 and
yeah,
not 53 or 63, which happens to people. And
yeah.
I just love the fact that you seem to have taken these adverse circumstances and grabbed it with both hands.
Yeah, I mean, you're sort of given no choice. You can fight it and get nowhere and just waste your energy on it, or you can just think, you know what, this is a new opportunity. Let's go.
Yeah, and I think that attitude would take you and anyone else far. And I love that you've embraced this. What was your experience with boating, if any? I mean, going from, as you said, bricks and mortar to a narrowboat is quite a big leap. Did you have any experience in the
Yeah,
boating world?
absolutely none. I'd never
Right?
even been on a narrowboat before. um, I'd thought about kind of different, more nomadic ways to live to give me a bit more freedom. And I did consider van life for a while, but I just thought, I think I want a little bit more space for me and the dog.
Mm-hmm.
So narrowboating was kind of another option that I think I'd not really known about a couple of years ago. Obviously, I've walked down the canal before, I've seen narrowboats, but never really considered what it would be like to live on one, to travel on one. I knew you could go on holidays on them, but yeah, I kind of went down the canal for a walk the one day. It was just a random Sunday. I had no plans for the afternoon, and I just like to walk. So me and Ethel, we went for a walk, and before I knew it, we'd walked like 8 kilometers in one direction down the towpath, and I'd never felt more grounded in all my life, just taking in all the nature, chatting to people. And at that point, because it was March time, it was starting to get dark by the time I reached my destination. So we had to Uber back.
Right.
But when I got home, I just thought, wow, I feel so almost relaxed and grounded. And, then the outdoors has always been kind of a place where I've been able to just be and gather myself and really reel myself back in when the thoughts get a bit too much. So since that day, I kind of just fell into this rabbit hole of research, watching YouTube videos.
Mm-hmm.
I was on like waiting lists for books at the library, and I joined like online forums, and I was just learning as much as possible and looking at online adverts for narrowboats for sale, and I didn't really know what to look for. I had certain ideas in my head, and can't have something that's too big because I'll be living on it on my own, trying to handle things like that. And I was thinking of like all the practical things that came along with it, but there's so much to learn about new systems like batteries, inverters, how the gas works, a lot of logistical
Mm-hmm.
things that living in a house you just don't have to think about. So I
Right.
tried to do as much research as possible, but there's nothing like getting hands-on experience. All the theory you can learn, but things still crop up today that I have no idea how to deal with, and you just have to do it. So I saw a boat that was advertised locally for sale.
Mhm.
I went to see that, and even though it really excited me, I didn't quite feel, it's almost like there was a little block. I didn't quite feel like, oh, can I really do this? Like, can I see myself living on this boat? And then I left it for a few weeks, thought about it. And as I was walking down the canal again one lunchtime, it was almost like out of nowhere, I saw this boat with a for sale sign in the window. And it's a boat that I'd literally seen countless times before. There were two little cats that lived on board. So I had pictures of those cats on my phone as I'd gone for like walks down the canal. I'm like always taking pictures of animals. And I just, straight away, I saw this advert and I got onto my phone and I found the listing, and I just had this really overwhelmingly like positive feeling, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is
This is
it.
it. Yep.
Yeah, so I phoned the brokerage straight away and I was like, can I come and see this boat? And they booked me in, and just as soon as I walked in, I was like, this feels like home.
I love that. That's such a
Yeah, so I
wonderful
bought
thing.
her.
The rest is history.
Yeah.
Um, for those of us who are uneducated on the topic, I mean, to me, a narrowboat, I can picture it. It's a quintessentially English thing, and we've got listeners all over the world. Is there a definition of what a narrowboat is or isn't? I mean, obviously the name gives it away. But
Yeah,
what makes a narrowboat that?
so there's a lot of kind of lingo that's thrown around by people that don't necessarily know. There are a lot of different types of boats.
Right.
Um, a lot of people refer to them as barges, and that's not correct. So a barge is typically something that's used for transport.
Hmm.
It doesn't usually have like a cabin to go inside. It's just a big kind of clunky floating thing that you can pile on heavy goods to transport. Um, a narrowboat, however, it's usually about 6 foot, just over 6 foot and a half wide,
Hmm.
but they can come in all sorts of different lengths, anything from tiny ones like 23 foot all the way up to 70 foot.
Right.
So mine's 58. It's quite, it's kind of middle of the range. Like a lot of people will find this size is really suitable to live on full time.
Right.
Um, Initially, I was looking for something like between 45 and 55 foot, which I think is why I didn't find this boat online or anything, because I wasn't looking for a boat this big, but a few extra feet, and I'm living in it, and it's, yeah, I'm really really chuffed with it. So it's funny how things work out. But you have things in the UK like wide beams, which are sort of like double the width of narrow boats, but obviously
Right.
they're less. You can travel less on them because the standard lock can only fit a narrow boat through it.
Right.
So they're sort of limited to where they can go.
Right. They'll be a bit more restrictive on being able to travel around the
Yeah.
country.
Yeah.
What did your friends and family say? Because I imagine when you had this idea, you probably had in the back of your head, some people are going to think I've lost my mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, it was mixed.
Right.
A lot of people that knew me, they were like, you know what? That makes so much sense for you. Other people were like, what on earth are you doing? Why on earth would you
Right.
do that? Have you thought this through? And from close family, they were potentially sort of reluctantly supportive.
Right.
They were supportive of the idea, but they had concerns, how is she going to cope on her own? What about when things break? And she doesn't know anyone that has a boat. So it's kind of that getting over issues that crop up. They were wondering how I'd deal with it. But
Right.
I think I'd just got to the stage where I was fed up, and I just thought it's now or never. if I don't take the plunge now, then there's a chance I'll live to regret it.
Absolutely. And I just think it's wonderful that you've done this. Um, do you think, and you've kind of alluded to this, but I'd love to touch on it again, running away from something, running towards something, a bit of both?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think at the time I was a little bit desperate to escape.
Hmm.
What that thing that I was trying to escape was, I can't really place my finger on, but I think I just felt a little bit stagnant, and
Right.
I wanted to experience more. I wanted to grow as a person. And it was almost like taking a leap of faith into something unknown and just trying to escape parts of my life that I wanted to change. But it's also living on the water. It feels like coming home to something.
I love that. I think sometimes we as human beings, we can chase the bigger, the better, the newer, the shinier, looking
Mm,
for that feeling. And often it's not at the end of that rainbow, it's somewhere else.
yeah.
And I love that you found that on the water. I was curious, again, I was thinking about living on the water and on boats in a world I know nothing about. Is there something you found that has been far more difficult than you thought? And conversely, is there something that's actually been much easier than you thought it might be?
So, in regards to finding things difficult, there's always problems that crop up, but it's not those that um have the most impact on me and I think, what have I
Mhm.
done? It's the fact that my dog doesn't really enjoy cruising a lot.
Really?
She loves being on the boat, and she jumps on it like it's second nature to her. But as soon as the engine starts and we're on the
Interesting.
move, she doesn't like it. So I do kind of rely on other people's support to get from A to B sometimes. If I don't, it's quite difficult on my own. Like if I'm going through locks, then I'll absolutely need somebody to be there with me, um, to just help Ethel really. But sometimes I think, oh gosh, what have I done? Like it's never going to be the romanticized lifestyle that everyone thinks it is, and I was conscious
Right.
of that. But my cute little dog, she's getting old, and I hate to think that I'm putting her through any sort of stress. So we do have
Yeah.
to plan really logistically to get from A to B when we're moving, or she'll stop at my mum and dad's for a couple of days while I can kind of push through a certain journey. But yeah, that's probably one of the biggest hardships that there is, just because I feel a bit guilty about
Right.
putting her through that. But she does take everything in a stride.
Good old Ethel. Yeah, I
I
feel
know.
I feel a kinship with Ethel over here. That's just wonderful. Something
Yeah.
you there was one Instagram reel or post that you made that really struck a chord with me because my sister said something very similar to me a few weeks ago, and that was playing tourist and something you
Okay.
get to do because so I've lived in Texas now just over half my life, and my sister's born and raised still lives in Glasgow. And when I go home, I'm trying to make a conscious effort not just to stay in Glasgow, but to travel around and see things. And she
Yeah.
said, at this point, you've seen more of Scotland than I have. Because, and I'm guilty of this where I live now, when things are on your doorstep, oh, they'll always be there. There's no need to go and see. I'll go there at some point. But when they're further away, you make more of a conscious effort to go and see these things. And
Yeah.
I was just curious if you wouldn't mind talking about this a little bit about playing tourist close to home, because I think it's
Yeah.
something we overlook wherever we live in the world, and we should embrace more of it.
Yeah. So I was completely guilty of this. I'd when I lived in Staffordshire with my mum and dad, I'd drive to Wales to go hiking, or I'd go to the Peak District, and I was always using some form of transport for an adventure. And it was that day that I walked down the canal with no sort of end goal in mind,
Mm-hmm.
that I really thought, like, well, I've lived here all of my life, and why have
Right.
I never done this walk before? That's literally right on my doorstep. I discovered so many things that I didn't know were there. And
Yeah.
so I try to make a conscious effort now. One, it saves me a lot of petrol money.
Yeah. Right.
But two, it's also, I've stumbled across so many places that I never would have known were there. And very often I start chatting to people. One of the places that really stands out to me, I was cruising through Dudley, and there's this incredible nature reserve. There's a place there called Bumblehole, and it must have been where during the Industrial Revolution, when they created the canals, digging out the canals, they had a lot of material to just get rid of. So it
Right.
all went in a pile. So through kind of this big industrial town, it's hustle and bustle. They've just turned into the most incredible nature reserve, and you wouldn't know it was there.
Right. Isn't that
And
amazing? Yeah.
and there's so many different trails to go down and bridle paths. There's people riding their horses, and I got talking to like a couple of people because everyone, like, some of the locals go there to walk their dogs. And I was talking to this one lady, and she was walking her neighbour's dog, and she said the amount of people that live in the area and they have no idea that this it's a huge, vast nature reserve. They've got no idea it exists, and it's just stumbling across places like that that I find really rewarding, because it's not like they're in travel guides, they're not on people's bucket lists.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really special to almost like stumble across it. They're not overcrowded. There's just so many lovely things out there that are just waiting to be discovered. And unless you actively go out to stumble across something, you wouldn't know it was there.
Yeah, I think that's a really important lesson for all of us. It reminds me of a local hiking trail. It's part of a nature preserve that's 2 miles from our front door. And it was last year I was there. I go all the time when the weather's nice, and bumped into a guy who was bird watching, and turns out he's from Glasgow, which was the first
Wow.
coincidence. Lives in the Dallas area where I am, but had driven a couple of hours up to this nature preserve because he said, "Oh yeah, this place is known for the bird migration. It's a great place to see." A, B, and C. I forget the name of the birds. That's not a world I'm really familiar with. But he was so
Yeah.
excited about the possibility of seeing this bird or that bird. And yet there's so many people who live within a 5 mile radius that have literally never been to it. And yet there's people coming from hours away to look for things. And it's, yes, so much is often on our doorstep, we overlook it. And it's very interesting that a world away you've had such a similar experience.
Yeah, it almost feels like discovering a little secret.
Yeah, yeah, things that people don't know about. And I don't know about you, but I kind of want to tell everybody, but they don't want to tell us all because
Yeah.
it's a sort of a yeah, a lovely little secret, but I don't want it to get overrun. But yeah, this little nature preserve near us is just, it's a little haven for us. Something I did want to ask you about was the canal, if this is the right term, the canal community. I'm quite involved with the hiking community and the outdoors community, and it's
Sure.
wonderful. People lean on each other, full of helpful advice, practical tips. I was
Yeah.
wondering what that looked like in real life. Now that you are on a boat on the canal, I'm sure a lot of it is online, and that's the way we live our lives these days. But curious
Yeah.
as to the canal community, any acts of kindness that particularly stand out for you, or where you've leaned on people to help you.
You know what? I completely um get the whole sense of community from being in hiking groups myself, and feeling like you've got a second family to fall back on. But on the canal, it's like that, but tenfold. It's
Really?
crazy. It's like nothing I've ever experienced before. And I always say this when I lived in a house, I know years ago, you used to be friends with all your neighbours and you used to rely on them for things. But I found that when I had a house, I only knew my immediate next door neighbour, and that was it. Everyone else is too busy living their lives to kind of socialise and get to know
Hmm.
each other. And I started off based in a marina and just got chatting to all my neighbours. You know, there was Stu, who offered to take me out on my first sort of maiden voyage in my narrowboat. So he was there to give me tips, get me out of any trouble. And yeah, like there's so many things that I think living on a boat, everyone's always got a story,
Hmm.
whether they've tried to escape something or whether they've been through hardships and are looking for their own little sanctuary. It's just so lovely. There was even, I had a neighbour that they'd bought a boat and over winter were storing it in the marina and they were trying to renovate it. They were from Yorkshire and my marina's in Staffordshire, so it was a long journey for them. And every time they'd come down, they'd do a little bit more renovation work on the boat. And the one day, the lady messaged me on Instagram. She was like, "Oh, we're just heading off now, but I've left you a bunch of daffodils on the bow of your boat just because, you know, I've enjoyed them and they've started to bloom now, and I'd like want you to enjoy them." So it's just really lovely to have like random acts of kindness. And you know, when I set out cruising, I came across countless problems that I thought I have no idea what to do, and everybody's so chatty, or everyone knows somebody that can help. And you know, you kind of, the culture is you return the favor. I was in this like quite remote village and there was a little knock on the boat and I opened it and this guy was like, "Oh, I've got absolutely no power on my boat. My phone's run out of charge." He was like, "I don't suppose you could pop my phone on charge?" And I said, "Here you go. Here's my power bank. Have it for as long as you need. Just pop it back when you're done." And it's things like that. It's almost like a very trusting community that
Right.
people look out for each other. We watch each other's backs. We'll lend people things happily and know that they'll come back to us once they're finished. It's just really lovely how we're almost like knit together in this little family tree that, you know, you can meet someone one day and be best mates with them the next day.
I love it. It's as you're talking, I keep thinking about there's a show on Netflix called Queer Eye, and there was one episode of it, and the whole idea is they go and help a deserving member of a community with sort of whatever it is they really need, you know, renovating their house, their wardrobe, all these kinds of things. But the very
Yeah,
final episode was a guy on a boat, and he lived in a marina on a boat, and he was a boat. I don't know if the real term is a mechanic, but that's what he did was maintenance and help people out on all the other boats. And he kind of let his boat fall into a state of disrepair. And usually on the show, they bring in experts, they bring in professionals to fix the quote unquote problems. But what they discovered was all these people with very expensive boats, these were clearly quite successful people who owned these boats in the marina, all said, "Hold up, we didn't know your boat was in disrepair. We'll be right there. Let me go
yeah,
grab my toolbox." And there was just this influx of people who all said, "We've got you. You know, you've looked after our boats. We didn't realize you were having these issues because you were too proud to say we've got it." And they just piled on and repaired this boat from bow to stern, I guess. And it was you could just feel the community coming through the screen.
yeah. That's what it's like. I mean, obviously you'll get the odd person that's, you know, keeps themselves to themselves, which is fine. But I just find that the whole narrowboating community is really accepting. It doesn't matter what background you're from, what ethnicity you are, what religion you are. Everybody is so colourful that lives on boats, and everyone's just accepted for who they are.
I love it. I think that's a really important lesson for all of us to take on board. As we kind of round the corner here to the end of this interview, I've got three questions I would like to ask you. And the first is success. We all would like to be successful in
Yeah.
life, but what does that look like for you at this stage of your life?
Well, it's very different to what success looked like for me 5 years ago.
Hmm.
I have got to the point where I'd like to just be and accept myself, accept my circumstances, and sort of face any problems that crop up with, a willingness to overcome it, and just carry on pursuing my passions and give myself the permission to do that.
I
So
love it.
yeah, I think
Whatever
success
we're
is,
doing in life, that's a wonderful lesson to share.
yeah, it's really like feeling like home within myself.
I love it. I was curious if there's been a particularly impactful book in your life. It might not be the best book, but one that has lingered in your thoughts over the years, something that's had an impact on your life.
Oh, wow, this is a really tough
Yes.
question. I call myself a bit of a book collector because I used to read all the time, and unfortunately I just don't make the time for it anymore.
Mhm.
So I've got so many books. Um hmm.
Yeah, I put you on the spot here, and I ask this because I think what you've just alluded to is something that many of us are guilty of. Like yesterday, I was on a 1 hour flight, and I could have just plugged in a podcast. I love listening to various podcasts, but said to myself, no, I've got a book to read, and I want to read it. And of course, when I
Yeah,
do, I go, why don't I make more time to do this? But then 6 weeks will pass, and I haven't touched it again.
yeah.
So was just curious as to how, yeah, what book has
I
inspired
mean, I love kind of stories about people.
you? Hmm.
So I've read a lot of people's biographies or even autobiographies about journeys they've been on. Um, One quite popular one that I've read, The Salt Path. Obviously, it's a journey of husband and wife facing extreme difficult circumstances and just deciding to embrace adventure. But I love the fact that when people are faced with such hardships, a lot of their healing is done out in nature.
Hmm.
So I think that's something that I found quite inspiring.
That's something that I've interviewed people from all walks of life on this podcast, and more often than not, what you've just said there is where people come back to.
Oh,
Yeah,
really?
using nature, using the outdoors, wherever they come from in life, whatever their situation, that's where they find healing and a space for growth. It's something that, yeah, I don't intend for that to be the recurring theme, and yet it just happens, which is
Yeah.
just lovely. My final question for you is, if you could invite somebody to join you on your boat for the weekend and just tootle around the canals, and you get to pick their brain and have conversations with them for the weekend and learn from them. And this could be somebody you know, somebody you don't know, somebody famous, somebody dead, somebody alive, anyone from history. If you could have them, show them the ropes of the boat and get to pick their brains, who would you like to have join you for a weekend?
Wow. That's an incredible question. So, first thoughts that come to mind would be George Harrison from
Oh,
the Beatles.
that's a good answer. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. From an early age, I've been inspired by George and sort of his journey, his music, just kind of him having this persona as being the quiet Beatle when actually he's got such an interesting story. And he was he decided to almost go on this journey of self-discovery. A lot of
Hmm.
nature-based things. He explored different religions, and I've always just found him such an interesting human to learn about. And his music is incredible, so I'd love a little serenade from him.
Right, absolutely. You could serenade you going down it wouldn't get much better than that, I don't think. Well, Narrowboat Beck, if people want to find out more about you, ask questions about life on a narrowboat, or, your day-to-day living, where can they find you?
So I'm on most social media, so Instagram and TikTok, I'm Beck Goes Solo. On Facebook, I'm Narrowboat Beck. If you just search for Narrowboat Beck on anything, that's usually my title on there. I'm trying to start off putting more long form content on YouTube, so watch out for that, although I just do need the motivation to sit and edit.
Yes, yeah, long form videos take a commitment, something I've not ventured into yet. But Beck, it's been an absolute pleasure. I've learned so much, and I think you've inspired everyone who's going to be listening to this episode. So thank you so much for your time today.
Oh, no, thank you so much. It's been lovely.
Thank you again to this week's guest, and I hope today's episode was as enjoyable for you as it was for me, and perhaps even inspired your next adventure. If you did enjoy the show, please be sure to subscribe, leave a review, or follow us wherever you get your podcasts. You can find more information at theoutdoorseyeducator.com or follow us on Instagram, TikTok, or Facebook. Until next time, thank you so much for listening to the Outdoorsy Educator podcast.